For some persons, Nigeria is irredeemable. When you see people saying or expressing their view about Nigeria being irredeemable, you don't have to blame them because they have their reasons. One of these reasons is what we are seeing, of course, in this crisis erupting or engulfing the entire National Assembly. Now, Natasha have raised concerns or alarm over the alleged sexual harassment by the Senate President. Now, the Senate President or the Senate has their own rules, but what is important here is that someone's life is in jeopardy, is being threatened, and she has to raise alarm before the public. What the Senate should have done is to invite Akpabio, the Ethics and Privileges Committee should invite Akpabio and eventually discuss issues of importance. But rather than inviting Akpabio or taking some disciplinary measures or set up panel of investigation to first of all establish whether such allegation is false or true, then that is the only time when they can come up with any stringent positions based on the provisions of the law, of course, to either discipline Akpabio or Natasha. Some persons have called for the Senate President to step down, to enable the investigation, to enable in the investigation to avoid any interference with the process of investigations by the committee, ethics of privilege committees, or any other committee that might be constituted, an independent committee that might be constituted to look into this weightier matters. The issue of sexual harassment should be something everyone must frown at. Even the nation, even the lawmakers should be the ones to lead the fight against sexual harassment, rather than trying to intimidate and silence the supposed victims for whatever reason. What some person may ask, what does Natasha gain if Akpabio goes down? Well, that is beyond any sentiments. In a sane and responsible society, what matters is value, the character, and the quality of the leader, not sentiments that may be expressed or played by any one with vested interest or whatever. So what does the law say? This should have been done first before the whipping of sentiments. Now, this is what the action of the Senate is unconstitutional based on the provisions of the Constitution. What does the Constitution say? Does the Constitution allow even the Senate rules? Does it allow suspension of a sitting senator for the period of 6 months and withdrawal of his security and other orderlies that could help her to serve the people of Kogi Central? Now, the question again is, what was the findings? Had the Senate conducted any investigation? Have they invited Natasha to let them know what she knew about the sexual harassment? And of course, invites Akpabio to clear himself, regardless of the social status or positions he occupies. In a responsible and sane society, everybody is equal before the law. Some persons should not be considered untouchable or above the law. This is what the Constitution says, and whatever act that will lead to that is considered to be treason, and the Senate leaders could have committed treason. By my own opinion and by public opinion, some persons may have shared this same opinion. Now, this is what the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria stipulates. According to the Constitution, Section 1, Subsection 3, the provision of this Constitution shall have precedence over any other law, including Senate standing laws, rules, and the other laws shall be declared void to the extent of the inconsistency. Section 287 of the 1999 Constitution, as modified, states that 287 subsection 1, all authorities and individuals as well as courts with subordinate jurisdiction to that of the Supreme Court shall enforce the decision of the Supreme Court in any part of the Federation. In any part of the Federation. Now, subsection 2 says all authorities and individuals as well as courts with subordinate jurisdiction to the Court of Appeals shall enforce the Court of Appeals decision in any part of the Federation. Subsection 3 says all authorities and individuals as well as other courts of law with subordinate jurisdiction of the Federal High Court, a High Court, and those other courts shall enforce the decision of the Federal High Court, a High Court, and other courts established by this Constitution in any part of the Federation. Now, the Constitution, Section 6, grants the Nigerian Court judicial authority. It is blatantly illegal for the National Assembly or a state assembly to suspend a lawmaker. A number of Nigerian courts have ruled against the suspension of lawmakers. The locus classicus in this case is Speaker, Bauchi State House of Assembly, versus Honorable Ratalo, Samson Drama, as is being stipulated here, citing references. Since the legislature is a representative of a constituency recognized by the Constitution, the Court of Appeal ruled that there is no master-servant relationship between the legislature, House of Assembly, or the National Assembly, and a lawmaker. This ruling is current law in Nigeria. The appellate court further declared that under section 111 of the Constitution, 111 of the Constitution, the Revenue Mobilization, Allocation and Fiscal Commission, not the first and second appellant, is in charge of fixing the respondents, Honorable Dana, salaries and wages. The respondent's salary and benefit as a member of Bauchi State as House of Assembly are not subject to interference. The Speaker of Bauchi and the House of Assembly, respectively, the Speaker of the Assembly and the House of Assembly, respectively. It is quite explainable here. These rights and privileges granted to an elected member of the House of Assembly cannot be taken away by any of the rules or standing orders of the Bauchi State House of Assembly. Do you understand that it is a flagrant violation of the provisions of the constitutions? Unfortunately, the lawmakers are committing suicide, of course, constitutional suicide, as far as this matter is concerned. What here is saying that they don't have the express right to suspend the allowances and salaries accrued to Natasha as a representative of a constituency. They don't have the right to stop it under the Nigerian law, which supersedes any other law, be it the Senate standing rules and the rest of them. In times of conflict, this Nigerian constitution supersedes every other laws or standing rules, including that of the Senate. So under no circumstances should Natasha's salary and privileges, allowances be withdrawn. That is the provision of the Constitution. What the Senate has done is a rape of the Constitution, a suspension of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, 1999 as amended. That is just the case. So it is quite unfortunate and laughable when we see all these dramas happening. Now, if the Senate could disregard the position of the constitutions without making reference to the provisions of the Constitution that in order of precedence, the Constitution supersedes even the standing rules or orders, of course, of the National Assembly. So it is an overboard, an oversight for them to have taken such positions. Therefore, the Senate standing rules and orders regarding the suspension of lawmakers and their salaries are void from the beginning, since they violate Nigeria's constitution and are not enshrined in any national law. The Constitution requires the IG, the Inspector General, to provide police protection for Senator Natasha while she conducts her legislative duties in the National Assembly. The following week, however, the Constitution also requires the IGP to arrest and prosecute Senate leadership members for actions that are likely to cause a breach of peace. Because the Senator Natasha is not just standing on her own, she is representing a constituency. And it is a suspension of the constituency, not even Senator Natasha in place. So if the constituency is recognized by the national law or the constitution of the Nigeria, you can't suspend an entire constituency. So the representative of that constituency has the rights, being protected and backed by the law, to serve the people, to represent the people. Suspension of Natasha for 6 months means an abrogation of the provision of the Constitution that recognizes such constituency and depriving the entire populace of the constituents their rights of representation and governance. It's quite unfortunate. Parliamentary immunity does not apply to egregious violation of the law or attacks on the Nigerian Constitution. Do you understand that? The people of Kogi Central elected Senator Apoti Odara Natasha to the upper chamber to represent them. And the Senate is not allowed by the Constitution to unvote him. The Senate leadership actions against Senator Apoti Natasha are mind-blowing and totally out of line. They are reminiscence of the abhorrent military dictatorship. After overcoming the military burden, we are now subject to parliamentary tyranny. This is to say that these people are untouchable, and once you dare to touch them, regardless whether you are, of course, right or not, will be dealt with. Is a direct witch hunting of Natasha and the people of Kogi, of course, who might resort to protest and expression of their grievances that may lead to breakdown of law, because it is a flagrant violation of their fundamental right, and as such they may not accept that. It is quite important. And again, according to section 249 of the Criminal Code Act of 2024, any person who does an act which is likely to cause a breach of the peace, or who does an act which in the circumstances in which it is done is likely to cause fear or alarm to the public or to any particular person, is guilty of misdemeanor and is liable to imprisonment for 1 month due to their unconstitutional exclusion from the Senate of the Federal Republic of Nigeria for 6 months. Senator Natasha Apoche constituency in Kogi Central may take matters into their hands, of course, and likely resulting to breach of public peace. It is quite important we understand this, and I come back to my position that when you see people saying that Nigeria is irredeemable, and these are one of the reasons, because it is quite unfortunate, and this is unacceptable. Honestly, it is unacceptable by the provisions of the Constitution. Whatever happens, only time will reveal, of course, the next line of action. Yes, the next line of action, as that have generated so much controversies and people are reacting to that effect. And of course, Natasha has gone to court to challenge this position by the Senate leadership, and eventually whatever the courts might decide might eventually prevail. It is quite interesting because Natasha challenged the 6 months suspension in the court, as she have expressed her willingness to challenge such actions by the leadership of the Senate over the alleged sexual harassment. It is quite interesting. Well, let's see. The legal counsel to the Kogi lawmaker, Victor Giwa, dismissed the Senate resolution as a violation of the court order. Giwa spoke with the Punch on Thursday after the Kogi lawmaker was suspended by the Senate and walked out from the National Assembly complex. The Nigerian Bar Association and opposition parties similarly berated the Red Chambers for not giving Apoche Udara ample time to present her sexual harassment complaint against Akpabio. Giwa said the Senate Committee on Ethics and Privileges acted in violation of a court order that allegedly restrained it from taking further actions on the matter pending on the determination of a motion on notice. The suspension is void. It cannot even take an effect. The suspension is illegal because there is a court order that restrains the Senate Committee on Ethics and Privileges from taking further actions. You can understand that now. Okay, the committee disobeyed a valid court order that was served on them, making a mockery of the chamber that is supposed to uphold the law. That is a very strong position. Now, he argued that if Senator Apoche Udara had not sought legal intervention, the suspension might have stood. The lawyer also expressed conviction that with a court order explicitly directing the Senate to halt disciplinary actions, the decision to suspend her was null and void. Giwa further revealed that legal actions will be taken against those responsible for violating the court directives. We are going back to court. The case is coming up in about 2 weeks and we will inform court that despite being served, including the Senate president, they still acted in violation of the order by suspending the plaintiff, he added.